which is to talk about the G Plus, how we collect data, our data program, and how that then drives our work program and our outputs. My name is Mariana Carvalho. I am technical manager for the G Plus, and I am joined today by two great speakers in Francis Kelsall from Iberdrola and one of our data champions, and by Garry Bradford from EDF Renouvables, who has been a long-standing G Plus participant, but joins us today in his capacity as the chair of the European Focal Group. Before we kind of get cracking, I just wanted to say that please make use of the Q&A feature in Zoom. We'll be having a Q&A session after the presentations, and I'll be looking to the questions asked there to put them to your speakers. If you like the questions someone else has posted, please, I think you can thumbs it up or vote it up or say you like it. So I'll be able to see from that what are the questions that most of you want us to answer. So do make use of that. You are also welcome to make use of the chat feature to kind of make any other comments that are not a question. And yeah, we are recording this today so that we are able to share it with anyone who was unable to join, and you'll also be able to share it with colleagues of yours later down the line. So before we get started, I will do just 5 minutes or so on a quick overview of the G Plus for anyone who isn't familiar with the G Plus, and then we'll go to Francis for data program, and then to Garry for how that all links up with the work program. So why the G Plus? So G Plus was set up over 10 years ago with this kind of clear, simple objective to help create a safer and healthier global offshore wind industry. It is the only global offshore wind member organization that is dedicated to health and safety. We now have over 25 members and associates, and we work across these 4 areas, which really is how that happens is the focus of today, but it's sort of the incident data reporting that then drives our good practice guidance, the topic selection for our Safe by Design workshops, and obviously fuels everything that goes into the learning from incidents. We are supported by the Energy Institute, and my little initial plug to join as an individual member of the EI. This is really beneficial for the G Plus because it allows the work that we do to really focus on the technical aspects and the things we want to work on, and we rely on the EI for sort of all of the back end type stuff, including the people that have made today possible as a webinar, as well as our website, finance, etc. So it really allows us to be focused on the things that truly matter. I mentioned we have 25 plus members, and that is displayed here on this slide. I won't go through all of those, but maybe I'll just comment that it's almost 2 years since I joined the G Plus, and this slide is getting crowded. It's really grown in that time. On that first kind of band of logos, you see our full members, and in the kind of second band lower of logos is the associate members. And I mentioned that split, and I think maybe Francis will touch on this as well, because as a condition of membership, the full members, so the companies on that top band of logos, are required to submit their data. While for the associate members, it's something we really encourage. We really try to help and facilitate, but it is not a requirement of their associate membership to do so. I already mentioned sort of our 4 pillars, and we'll get into it throughout the whole of today. But on this slide, I'll just like to pause on Toolbox, which is maybe something that my 2 guest speakers want to touch on so much. And Toolbox is our incident and learning sharing platform. It is an EI tool, so it doesn't just cover offshore wind, it covers kind of the whole of the energy sector. it focuses on incidents with a fatality or serious injury potential. And it was developed from the Human Factors and Learning from Incidents Committee and the Energy Institute, that has sort of a great legacy and experience in, say, the hearts and minds tools and all of that work. So decades of work in this space. So the way that the incident is formatted and the way that the lessons are pushed have all been informed by the experience of that Learning from Incidents Committee. So I really encourage you all, if you haven't yet, to visit Toolbox and to sign up to receive alerts for either offshore wind, if that is your area. I imagine so if you're joining us today, or any of the other work areas. You can choose to receive alerts from by hazard, for example, confined space, or by type of operation, say lifting. So you get a kind of dedicated email when an alert gets added. We also share alerts that don't kind of meet that threshold of fatality or serious injury potential through the G+ website. And if something gets added there, sometimes more along the lines of sort of, say, a product recall type alert, we also mention it on LinkedIn. So a good way to keep aware of everything that's going on in the G+, be it the release or the consultation stage for good practice guidance, the announcement of Safe by Design workshop, or the learning from incidents or alerts that come out. Join us on LinkedIn, because we use it a lot to communicate with you. And on that note, and this is sort of my final introductory slide, I'd like to sort of end just by showing you the G+ team. We have, and you can, we're here to support you, and we're, as I said, very active on LinkedIn. You can reach us there. If you're based in the Americas, do speak to my colleague Beate. If you are in APAC, you can reach out to Karen, who's based in Taiwan. Edwin, who is not able to join us today because he's on a very well-deserved break after publishing the G+ data and the safety on onshore wind safety data. He's our technical manager for data, and so when we talk about the Power BI and all of the QA/QC work that happens on the data we receive, that's all Edwin. So you can reach all of us. You can reach Kate, or indeed Jack or Olivia on LinkedIn, or via our personal emails. We're here to support you, so don't hesitate to get in touch. Right, let's get to sort of the meat of it. So Francis is joining us today to talk about what is the power of an industry database, how does G+ actually collects data, the improvement plans we have for the future. I will then jump in and help out with the 2023 report and some slides on that. But over to you, Francis, and thank you for joining us.
No, hi Mariana, thank you so much. Thank you for having me today. Hi everybody, I'm Fran Kelsall. I'm the audit and reporting lead for the Iberdrola Renewables offshore business. So I lead the data and reporting team within the health and safety, environment and quality department here for us. I have been in health and safety and the industry for nearly 10 years now. I can't quite believe when I say that, and with Iberdrola for 5 of those. My background is in psychology, particularly interested in human factors. And really that continues to drive me in what I do today, particularly working with data and analytics for health and safety, because considering how we all interpret the data, interact with it, consume it, it's a very interesting topic for me, making sure that we're making the right assumptions from what we see and how those decisions are made from those as well. So yes, I've been asked to come today to talk about the power of the industry database. Apparently I'm the longest serving data champion, I think. I don't know whether I can get a little badge or something for that, but yeah, so I hope I'm well placed to explain this to everybody, and obviously be able to have a look at how what the G+ work stream on data is doing to positively impact safety within the industry. So the power of an industry database. Anybody who's conducting research, reading research anyway from any sector obviously appreciate the importance of, say, sample size, absolutely key in giving you increased reliability and being able to apply your conclusions and what you draw from your findings when you're looking at your data. So with that in mind, as sort of sample size as a topic, of course, when we have an industry database for all of this information, that large sample size allows us to find patterns in there that just wouldn't be visible within the smaller data sets. Thinking of just my particular data set from Iberdrola here, that does not give me, obviously, that full picture of the industry. And that's especially important when it comes to any of the serious incidents that we've seen over the years. And just because we may not have experienced that at one operator doesn't mean that you haven't yet, unfortunately. And of course, you know, we're doing all the same activities and the same work. So obviously it's incredibly important that we share this information, have access to it equally. And then of course we can mitigate against that properly. Further on that point, really, and it's, you know, something that is often talked about in a lot of the G+ meetings that we participate in. There's no competitive advantage when it comes to safety. So sharing all this information and having it in the global database just means that we can all work together and be proactive and you know, make sure we have preventative measures in place for everybody. And of course, as we say there at the bottom, learn together, learn faster. You know, we can get there much quicker, much better as a group, and putting all this information in there together. Of course, what we're really wanting as a team to work together and have a really strong and positive data culture, you know, within the industry, making sure people feel confident in the information that we've got, and obviously to allow for data-driven decisions, which, you know, the point of why we're wanting to be here today to talk about this, making sure that that's, you know, well-informed decision-making from the data that we provide. So yeah, if we move into the next slide, Mariana, thank you. How do we achieve this? This is our sort of annual cycle for the incident data reporting, obviously, that I participate in quarterly. So as it suggests, each year we've got the cycle that we follow. The members, as Mariana alluded to earlier, submit their data on a quarterly basis. And of course, really at first point there, definitions and scope that's been agreed by the members. So we make sure those are reviewed. There's specific templates that everybody is provided with and reporting guidelines, just to make it very clear as to what everybody needs to adhere to when they're submitting their data. We put everything in quarterly. Like we said, mandatory for members, optional for associates, but that all comes through the dedicated data champion like myself here. We gather all that together from our own databases and then put that into the dedicated template and pop that into Edwin. And he'll be receiving all of our Q2 data very shortly. Maybe why he's having his holiday now. But yeah, and then of course it goes into that QA/QC process. So we make sure everything's anonymized, removing any identifiers, particularly for obviously the different operators and any of the contractors that are involved. Making sure GDPR compliance, obviously incredibly important, and verifying it, making sure that obviously the definitions are met that are from the guidelines and adhering to all of that. Then we have deep dive meetings every quarter as well. And we have a look at this. So once Edwin's done his sort of first pass over and gathered all that information together, we start having a look at it as a group to see if we can see anything that stands out, if we've got any queries, questions, particularly on kind of like if something's been maybe a bit misallocated or it's a bit unclear as to what it is. So we kind of don't just do that process as an individual and, you know, put that pressure on Edwin. It's done as a group where it's a diverse kind of thing, lots of different minds and thoughts onto that. So I think that's a really important part of what we do. And then of course we have the annual report, which has just recently been published for 2023. Mariana will talk about that a little bit in a minute. But of course, that gives us the opportunity to identify any themes that we can see and obviously to feed into the work streams and obviously what Gary's going to talk about as well this afternoon. So yes, next slide, thank you. and what do we collect? Yeah, and I think this is, obviously very key, and sort of give you that bit of insight into what it is that's coming into us. So it's all incidents and high potential hazard observations. It's type of data that the G+ currently collect alongside working hours. All of these are only from incidents and hours that are on premises that are under that particular operator member's full control. So they're not submitting data and information from, say, at the moment, fabrication yards where that area and everything is owned and operated by a contractor. But we do have a fabrication yard work stream that has been started up only in the last 12 months, 12 to 18 months. So yes, how we'll kind of start to supplement that with data. We'll see how that progresses. The incidents as well are anything with actual consequence, of course, whether that be harm to persons or asset damage, but also near misses, particularly, of course, high potential near misses, anything that has a potential to cause injury to a person. And we standardize what we collect through what you can see on the screen here in the columns. This is sort of a little part of the template that we use for submission. And just obviously, so we're making sure that every line item, every incident that appears on there contains the same data, meets the same metadata, metadata requirements. And then obviously we can do appropriate analysis through incident area, work process, and then start the trending, which of course you can see on the bar charts there. Just to say again, I know I mentioned before about having the reporting guidelines, but obviously that's very key that that's followed. It makes sure that everything is categorized and consistent, and that's particularly important when it comes to the sort of high potential incidents or the that categorization, so that then we can create targeted action plans based on those. So that comes through the QA process. Of course, then that allows Edwin to do all his good work, and he can start putting together all of the visualizations for the data, producing the report, obviously that gets published, and of course the new dashboard that he's launched just as the report came out. So it's a brand new Powered BI interactive dashboard that's available on the website. So yes, that's it here. How can you access it? Sit straight to the website. All of the reports are on there. You can have a look at any of the previous year's reports as well. So you can see some of the focus areas that we talked about in previous years. And of course, fully interact with the dashboard. So I'd really encourage you to do that, to go and have a look at the data and see what you can find out there. And last slide, I think, please, Mariana. Thank you ever so much. Yes, so improvements, of course, that's it, our passion for continuous improvement. You can't get away from it. So obviously everything that we are already achieving through the data gathering and analysis, we've still got a lot to do. We want to continue to strive for improvement in what we're doing. As the first point says there, this is a rapidly changing industry. Turbine size, design, the distance from shore, new jurisdictions, new cultures, particularly important for safety. We've got to adapt to this. We've got to move with this and stay ahead and make sure we impact it proactively and not so reactively. We're planning, I believe from discussions we've been having, expand on some of the data points that are in the template, that we currently gather, trying to give us more insight and allow us to be a little bit more granular in how we go into the information. So I think that's something Edwin's looking to be doing there. Mentioned just before, but again, wanted to foster a really strong data culture. Data-driven decision making is key. And if we can look to sort of emphasize the responsibility on all of the data owners, so all of us as members and associates, anyone who's providing that data into the main data set, making sure we take responsibility for the accuracy and the consistency. Of course, that's going to mean that alongside improvement to the G+ definitions, we're going to be able to align even more with each other and again have more confidence in the data and the analysis output that we see from the reports. But finally, another area that, of course, we're aware we want to start improving on is leading indicators. Obviously, majority of the information that we report on are lagging indicators, and of course, therefore, the actions that come from this considered more corrective rather than preventative. So we're hoping, through the work stream, through everything that we're doing together, discussing with all of the members who, maybe already taking this approach, to work together and steer the industry really towards the leading indicators and help emphasize their importance and proven effectiveness. So I think we'll obviously look to discuss between everybody in the data champions group to see a way that we could standardize some leading indicators, something that's available already that everybody's doing. We'll have to find out where those commonalities lie at the moment and just see if we can again start to introduce that as part of the data and part of the report. But yes, other than that, that's everything from me, I think.
Thanks, Frances.
That's all right.
Cool. So I will just pick up and share a little bit about, well, with the 2023 and some of our historical trends. We'd envisioned this kind of webinar as more about how do we link our data to our work program, but we thought, considering the timing, that a lot of you might join us today to hear about the data. So I thought, let's at least share a little bit on that. So I'll start with this chart and I think a discussion on scope, because I think it's really important to understand the context of everything that comes. So here on this bar, you will see the reported work hours by site type. We only started splitting the work hours in 2019. So to receive them reported by site type in 2019, and this is why I can only go as far back as 2019 for this. And it's really interesting, to see, it just really shows the growth of the industry and reflects that. As we might have expected, to see construction go, and construction's in the red in the bottom band, to see it go from, just over 10 million to just over 40 million in these years is like really great. Operations kind of following behind a little bit, but everything obviously that's been constructed will eventually go into O&M. So we'll see that top green band grow quite a lot more in the near future. And of course, nothing happens without development activity, which is in that darker band in the middle. But a note on development, I think it's one of those that's interesting to see, and maybe I'll show the next slide first, where you can see the work hours split by region, because it's really obvious here in this slide when you look at the work hours in APAC and the US, and in the US that we've received for 2023, that where for development you'd expect that darker blue band in the donuts to be a bit larger than it is, and it just reflects a little bit what we mentioned already, that the associate members of the G+, who are likely to have more of a sort of development profile to their operations, aren't necessarily, don't all of them have to report their data. But also, and I think for development it's important to note, and it's something we'll never get away from really, is that this difference in the jurisdictions and how the data, the work hours actually get accounted, and at what point does it actually start, it changes a lot around the world. And so even from the same company, depending on where your operation is, you might be counting your work hours at one point differently in different countries. So this to say, we for construction and operations, those work hours that we feel are absolutely solid and representative of our members and the companies that report their data. For development, I think it's interesting to see, and I think it's been, when we saw this version of this slide previously, where we were very much going, okay, we really need to encourage our associate members to report, because we think will help us get that development phase data a little bit more representative of actual activity in the industry. But also, just to pause on this slide and say, last year these donuts would not be so big for APAC and the US. Just how close they are getting to the work hours in Europe. Not yet in the O&M phase, obviously, but in the overall work hours is incredible. And we weren't it took us a little bit by surprise when we sort of saw the 23 numbers in full. We hadn't quite clocked how big the work hours being submitted by the members were. It wasn't quite this much in 2022. So again, huge change in the industry and a maturing and growing and ever more global industry. What has this all meant for our rates? So we have a very much plateauing, a leveling of our total recordables and lost time injuries. In fact, sort of lost time injury, which, and apologies if you're colorblind, but as you can see in the numbers on the actual table, so lost time injury is the band, is the bottom line. And that has had a slight uptick for the frequency for 2023. So going from 1.03 to 1.07, and but just a flattening of the rates, which is concerning to us. We also, for the first time in 2023, have had a fatality reported in the G+ dataset. This occurred at the end of the year in an onshore at a pre-assembly site in France, and it involved a worker on the basket of a mobile elevated working platform. The incident has lessons from this incident, or early lessons from this incident have been shared at G+ meetings, but the incident is under investigation, and so we wait for that to be complete before it is submitted and put on Toolbox, but it will be eventually put on Toolbox. But apologies if you are joining today to hear more details of this. It is not something we can talk about until the investigations are further underway. And on this slide, so I thought I would try to show you a little bit of what you can do with the Power BI, mostly to entice you to actually go over and play with it and actually look at it for yourself and investigate the things that interest you the most. So on here is a screenshot of Power BI showing you the top work processes by number of incidents for 2023, filtered just by high potentials. So so you see there that lifting operations, which has historically been our top work process, or if not top, then second, but pretty much top over the years. And it was top again in 2023. And you can, the two other bars, but for work process are in the red, the previous year number of incidents, so 2022 in this case, and then the purpley bar shows the number of incidents, the 5-year average number of incidents. And so this is also to show you a little bit of how are we changing the way we look at our data. In the past, our reports have been very much, here's 2022, here's 2023, and not so much looking to say, hey, we've got all of this historical data now, like how has 2022 compared to kind of our history? How is it different? And so we're trying to move more into that space where we say, oh, hang on a minute, what is actually different here? And so the chart or the bars on the bottom right are showing the percentage change and the year on year, and the percentage change compared to the 5-year average for work processes. And so actually for 2023, the work process with the most change was chemical and hazardous substances, so incidents reported under that category, which does not usually kind of make it far in our top 10 for work processes. But it's interesting to note that actually this is where we're seeing the most negative change. And we're talking high potential incidents throughout all of this chart, right? So lifting, which had the highest number of incidents, has historically had the highest number of incidents, actually had comparatively fewer number of incidents to 2022. So it was a negative percent change. But the other incident or work process I'd like to highlight is transfers. We're not it's the third kind of the third set of bars in that bottom right corner graph, and you see that there's pretty much no change from year on year. The number of high potentials seems to be maintained, and it's obviously something that the G Plus is very concerned about, something we've issued guidance on, and so it's something that we are paying close attention to and sharing of sharing of incidents across the industry. And Garry, I think, will pick up on this topic as well. I'll stop there. If you have questions on the 2023 data, please do feel free to ask during the Q&A later on. You're also welcome to email me or contact me on LinkedIn about it. But please do also go and explore that Power BI. Look for the things that interest you the most. There is a lot that is there and that you can do with it. Okay, so Garry, over to you. How do we take all of this and actually develop a work program that, hopefully and intentionally makes a change happen in our industry?
I have no idea, but I'll try my best to work through it. Hello, so my name's Garry Bradford. I am, as my title suggests, the Charged Emission Operator at Dilla Direction with EDF Renouvables, which is quite a posh title. It means project manager, health and safety project manager. So, but actually, until last year, I was the head of HSE for EDF Renewables in the UK, and have been working with G Plus and the previous counterpart, which I'll come to part of that, which was the G9. Since about 2009, 2010. So that was when I first started to get involved. So yeah, my sort of point of reference here is to take us from the general data set and how we collect that data, which I leave to the much cleverer people like Francis and Mariana, to the how do we apply that and how do we use actually other forms of data as well, because it's not just the monthly returns that we use. There are other ways that we bring data into the business, into the G Plus, and I want to touch on a few of those. So if we go on to the next slide. So if I think back to sort of that 2009, 2010, when we were really, as an industry, at an early stage, we weren't really very mature. We were doing things in ways that perhaps were new and we hadn't thought them through yet properly, but still we had to build wind farms. One area that we didn't have was data. We didn't understand the safety performance of our industry, and that was a conversation that came about actually from an incident that happened in Harwich, where there was a fatal incident way back when, and when we started to talk to the HSE about it, as an industry, we really couldn't give them that picture of where we were or what our performance was. So out of that time was formed something called the G9, which was 9 owner operators who got together. I was one of those. I was on one of those companies. I was working for E.ON at the time, and we formed the G9, which effectively said, okay, so we've put the terms of reference on there. You can read through those yourselves. But really, to started that journey to say, how do we get that picture of the industry, and how do we understand the effect of what we're doing is having on our employees? And we started to count. So we started to pull some numbers together. That's what you can see there is one of the first ones. And when I look at what Mariana has just shown you and what Francis talked about, it seems a bit prehistoric, but it was a starting point, and it was more than we had. So it was a useful start to drive us forward. Our relationship, of course, with people like the Health and Safety Executive in the UK and other regulators was very different then. We couldn't have an intelligent conversation around where we were performance-wise. So over the next few years, there was a lot of effort put into doing that. And we've evolved since then. And, you know, please go to the G+ website, have a look at the data sets, have a look at how we can manipulate that data to help us identify areas of concern and areas of work. And that took us on to really starting to take that data from a negative perspective and look at a more proactive way. Okay, how can we learn lessons from that, and how can we feed that into the mainstream organizations, and how can we help people improve and maybe help prevent some of these incidents in the future? So as we've gone through that process, we've come up now with our active work streams. And over the years, we've done numerous work streams. And again, please go to the G+ website, have a look at some of the good practice guidance and the safety by design workshops that are out there, and you'll see some of the activity that's been undertaken. So these are the active work streams at the moment. Safe by design is a work stream that I've found particularly helpful for numerous activities that we've undertaken as a business. And certainly I remember when we started working with NNG and started building our NNG wind farm, we wanted some information about how step-overs and gaps between vessels and platforms. And actually the Safe by Design workshop on access and egress had just been undertaken. So that was a really good, rich place where we could go and get some data and some information from. I won't go through all these. You can see there we're still going strong. We've got some new work streams identified for 24. One area that we're quite keen to look at is welfare in the offshore wind industry. As you could probably understand, it's quite a difficult topic to deal with. Severe weather preparedness, and also one thing we've tried to do this year is to start and take a little bit of a step back and think about what we've done and how that has affected the industry, and how we've taken that good practice and implemented it across the members of the group. So we'll be looking at the implementation of good practice guidance, and we'll also be looking at some of our safety by design reports and thinking about, well, do we need to do more work around that? Has the world moved on since when we wrote those? And I'll pick up in a little while on one of those on how we've done that. So that's the active work streams at the moment. Lots of work being undertaken. We run those work streams really in two ways. We have usually a consultant who supports the group. We have the EI, obviously, who do a lot of work in the background, Mariana and Kate and the team, but also it's made up of members of the committees that work within the G+. So we find the subject matter experts within our own companies, and they support these work streams. So it's very much internal, and it's shaped in that way, so we get the best outcome for the members of the G+. Next one, please. This is a response that we've recently undertaken around walking to work. And when I talk about technology changing, this is a really good example that over the years, we've moved from small vessels to much larger vessels, which then come with the capability to directly connect to a wind turbine, so that you can literally walk to work. It's exactly what it says. Whereas in the old days, we'd have to get off a vessel, get on a ladder, climb up. Now, in a lot of situations, we can do that, walk to work, and that was great. And I guess everyone thought that would help us reduce some of the issues we might be having on musculoskeletal injuries or falls from height and things of that nature. Actually, what happened was we started to see a number of incidents, and over the past 12 months, as these systems have become more popular, we've started to see some incidents. These won't be in the data sets yet. They're not quite there, but they will be in next year's data set or this year's data set when it's the 24 set when it comes out. But we don't wait for that. We don't wait for the data to tell us that. When we clearly know there's an issue, we bring that issue to the focal groups and the forums. It gets discussed, and actually we've already had a workshop around walking to work and the systems and the incidents that we've had, so we can very early doors share that information, and then we know we'll see it later in the data set, but we can use that information. Everyone gets to know about it, and you can go and think about if those incidents would happen for you in your business. So that's quite an important way of responding, that we don't have to wait for data. We can get very quickly descriptive information from our members. So we looked at the data earlier on in the graphs, and that's great. But what I'm really thinking about is, how do we get that into the operations or the construction business or the development areas of our business? How do we get those lessons out? How do we make sure that they move forward? Well, the one that we're going to show you here is just an area that we've had some success with, and some not so great success with. So lifting is obviously a massive part of our operations, whether that's lifting large pieces of kit out into the ocean, putting them together, working off jack-up vessels with large cranes, or whether that's technicians having to lift using davit cranes to lift bags and equipment up to the top of the turbine, or hoists of any nature, and so there's a lot of different lifting activities, and we've decided that in the past we didn't quite get that right. In terms of, we did a safety by design workshop, which our scope was far too wide, and we've had to narrow that down to more eatable chunks so that we can manage it better, but again based on the data. So we've got a good practice guideline coming out in later in the year, and that's really going to be about governance in lifting and how you apply the right techniques to make sure you're doing the right things in the right way. We've had some safety by design workshops. You can see there, we did one in 2017 on davit cranes, but we reviewed that in 2023 during a material handling equipment workshop. So we don't just stand still with that data. We've taken that opportunity around materials handling to look back at it and make sure it's correct, and then we'll move on from there. But also we've done things like lifting operation workshop materials and facilitator guidance to really get to the front end of I like to call it the pointy end of our operations, where the likelihood where we're going to see people get hurt, so we can prevent that early doors. So 3 clear ways there that we've taken that data and we've pushed that out into the business in one way or another. Just a little bit on working at height, high potential events, and that's something that we've been working on a regular basis. We've got a working at heights document, which is, I think now it's its 2nd edition, which is around a good practice guideline, and that document comes along with a self-assessment package, so that our members can take that away, and non-members, of course, because it's all available free on our website. They could take that away. They can do a self-assessment of their business, look at the main requirements of the good practice guideline for working at height, and the lessons that we've learned, and see if they've implemented that in their business, which is a really good way of making sure that good practice guidance is driven to where it's needed, which is at the sharp end of the business. You can see from the graph down there that over the years we've seen a consistent improvement, particularly since 2020, in terms of hypos for working at height, and I would like to think that some of the work we've done with the G+ has helped the businesses improve that performance, and that's a particular area where we can see an improvement, where we know we've done some work, and hopefully it's had some effect to support that. Clearly the responsibility is on the businesses, but if that guidance isn't there, then they can't refer to it. So I think that's a really good opportunity to sell what we're doing really well. And you can also see from there that the 1st edition of that document was issued in 2014, and the 2nd edition came out in 2018. So we're not sitting on our laurels. And actually, when you look at things like the walk to work system, it will probably be coming up for another update in the not too distant future. So I mentioned earlier on that there's lots of freely available data on the G+ website, and certainly all of the good practice guidance is available. We also translate, by the way, the good practice guidance into other languages, so that you know, in APAC countries and other countries across Europe, they can get a more easy to understand version. Those are the ones that are available. I think we've got 3 or 4 more coming out, Mariana, if I'm correct, over the next few months. So there's really going to be a lot of information available to all of the industry and external to the industry on that website. One thing that's quite important is that and certainly something I'm quite passionate about, is that we need to get the understanding and data from the people who are at the really sharp end of the business, who are putting the spanners on the nuts, who are doing the climbing, who are doing the hoisting, who are doing the lifting operations, because they're the people who have that richness of experience that we can dip into. And one recent thing we've undertaken is an innovation challenge, and we're using Innovate UK to help us with that. So we're being supported by them to engage innovators when we're looking to solutions to a particular problem. This one is heavy lifting of manual handling challenges, and it comes when we're doing large tightening of bolts. So that you can imagine that a wind turbine is held together with some huge bolts, and how do we tighten those up? Well, we use huge spanners, hydraulic type spanners, which are very heavy, they're cumbersome and difficult to maneuver. So we've set that challenge out, and our installation technicians identified that if they could come up with a solution for that, then it would really reduce the manual handling. And we know we have an issue with musculoskeletal issues in our business. So that challenge closes on the 31st of July, and they'll be selecting a solution which will be presented to the board in September. But I think that's another way where we've taken data, this time verbal data, descriptive data. We've measured that against the data that's coming in the data sets on a quarterly basis, and realised actually there's a great opportunity here to make an improvement, and that's what we've done. We share in other ways as well, and the way that we get that data out to people. Mariana mentioned Toolbox earlier on. Toolbox is a really good opportunity to get operational experience from other areas of incidents that have occurred that we can use in all different ways. I mean, we've used Toolbox entries for things like toolbox talks, for looking at our own procedures. And they're really good. They're a really good opportunity for people to learn and for businesses to learn. There's a submission template. We put so many in. We really are pushing Toolbox to get as many people to put entries in there, and many of our members to put entries in there as we can, because the bigger we build that, the more the data gets richer and we've got more information. We also, as Mariana pointed out, have our alert system, and although that looks at the slightly lower end of the scale in terms of the potential severity of incidents, it's still a very useful opportunity and a very good repository for OPEX that our companies can look through. This is just an example from Toolbox, really, of what happened. And I won't go through it in all detail, but effectively, they reeled in the chain from the hoist without any load and stored it, and the store chain unexpectedly fell from the chain bag. And if you imagine that a chain coming out of that bag comes down at a high speed and can be quite dangerous, and if it hits someone, can cause quite an injury. So what happened there? Well, the company that concerned, the chain hoist design was not inherently safe, so they changed that. The chain technicians were unaware of the potential risks associated with it, that they couldn't see, didn't realise that it could drop, and so perhaps weren't setting up the right drop zones to help them avoid if that chain did come out. And this is if I'm being honest, this is one that we've seen right from the early days in the industry, and what we are seeing now is a much improved design for chain hoists. And I know that Safety On have also done some work around chain hoists, and they've done a recent Safe by Design workshop to look at it. So we also looked at it within our own area. If I just move on, please. And we took some of the learning from that. No, can you go back one, please? And we also did some learning from that, and that went into our materials handling safe design workshop that we undertook in the G+ in November. And that report has that been published now, Mariana?
It's finished. It's just with the publishing team. So
okay.
Yeah, it should really be out pretty soon.
So that's another way where we've seen an issue that's come up through the toolbox, and actually now that's some of the learning from that has gone directly into the good practice guidance, and then of course that goes out to all of our members and potential non-members. So it also asks some questions about whether or not the type of equipment that you might be operating could have the same issue, and I think that's really useful in driving companies to look at their own systems and their own equipment. Okay. So really, we've gone full circle now. So we've looked at the data, we've looked at the data sets, we've looked at how the data is gathered. We've also looked at some of the other ways that data comes into the G+ and how we use that and how we feed that into our good practice guidance and our safe by design workshops. But without our industry reporting, then we don't get that data. So whether it's a technischen putting a near miss form in, or whether it's people like Francis delivering really well structured data sets on a quarterly basis, all of that has to come from somewhere. It all has to be reported. So this is where we find what we call the golden nuggets. This is where we find the things that give us that little bit more in terms of how we can help prevent them in the future. I won't go through there, but you can see there's two clear points there where technicians have reported things, and all of that ends up within our data in some respect, and it also then ends up into a good practice guidance, a safe by design workshop, or some other form of alert that goes out from the G+. So lots of ways we get data, lots of ways we use data, and I guess I'll leave it there.
Cool. Thank you so much, Gary. Okay, I think we're on to kind of the Q&A part of our presentation. Just as I kind of get myself organized and look at questions, maybe I'll throw one to you, Francis, on maybe there's some people joining today who are from companies kind of fairly new to the industry. What would you, as an experienced data systems person in the industry, what would be your top recommendations for setting up the systems for anyone, for new entrants in the industry?
Yes, good question. I think definitely it has to be the management of the data and sort of your data governance approach. It's just absolutely key to ensuring you've got reliable and consistent data for your reports. So obviously your procedures, policies, guidelines that surround the topic, making sure they're very clear, you've got clear instruction, training for any of your users who are going to be data owners and they're going to be putting data into the systems where you're going to be gathering it. By far for me, that's the cornerstone, or whatever, to making sure that that's got you in the right footing, and like we were talking about before, so that you can then have confidence in the data and what's coming through in your interpretations for your findings. I'd also say as well, anybody, I think, most, of course, all of us as operators are using reporting tools. There's a lot of really good software out there, many different types on the market. Go out there, have a look at those, see what's best for your business. They'll help you, because obviously they're built on an iterative process. They're learning all the time and what they're putting into their pieces of software. So you'll have lots of data points and things in there that you may not have thought of, and that'll help you start to capture all of that, and put you on a good path.
Cool. Thank you, Francis. All right, I think there's questions both in the question bit and in the chat, but I'll start with the ones that were posted in the question. And there was another one for you, Francis, on are there any examples of data points or questions that can be used as leading indicators? What would you say, Francis?
Yes, no, good question. I think, of course, anything that we're gathering through proactive monitoring, so inspection data and the outcomes that the teams are finding from inspections, point of work inspections, drills and exercises. So, any of the results there. It's basically anything that we can start to gather in that we're all doing. Anyone of safety professionals and safety teams in the industry, all these things are happening. And we can work together to come up with indicators that show how those are having a positive impact, identifying anything before the fact, obviously trying to implement those controls before the incident rather than us relying on, as a lot of the stuff that we present at the moment is lagging, it's after the fact. So it would be those kind of areas. I think that's what, as a sort of group, we're going to be discussing as something that we're all doing that would be easy for us to be able to look at and gather and provide in a consistent manner, like we've been saying. So inspections, near misses.
And I mean, one of the things that we already collect in the G+ is the hazards.
Yes,
and
of
so
course.
Looking at the hazards data in isolation a little bit, but also not as a complete leading indicator, but exploring that data collection more as a leading indicator. Garry alluded to like how we go through those incident narratives for the hazard observations, and they've been really helpful when we have a safe by design topic. And we've gone through those hazard observations because there's lots of really good information in those. So I think we already have some things there that we can just formalize a little bit that will take us more into the leading space. But yes, definitely more to do in this area, but perhaps some lower hanging fruit that we're not quite maximizing as yet. Right, there's a question on whether fatalities that include medical incidents rather than just injury related are included. And I'll answer those, and then maybe Francis, if you want to add any comments. But so the short answer is no, unless it has been deemed work related. Yeah.
No, exactly right. Yeah, that would have been the same sort of point that I would have gone to as well. We have in the guidelines quite key definitions as to what we consider to be work related and non-work related. Acute medical incidents, etc., are not reported and not included in the data set. We do report on some of these things, though, particularly to do with sort of over the area of interest of like emergency evacuation, maybe involvement with search and rescue, etc., because it doesn't actually matter whether it's work related or not. If somebody needs evacuating, we're interested in the impact that has. But when it actually comes to the incident data set, whether it be sadly a fatality or just a acute medical condition, then those aren't reported or included in the data set.
I think it's worth also adding that we review our data set and how we report on a regular basis. And only last week at our European Focal Group, we talked about whether or not the classifications were correct, whether we needed to start and think about changing those. So it is an ongoing and sort of evolving situation, but you have to start somewhere.
And you have to pause as well, because if we kind of need to let the companies that are reporting, let the definitions filter through, because if we keep running ahead of everyone, then the data never stabilizes either. So there's a little bit of a push and shove in that as well. Maybe you can answer this one first, Garry. There's a question in the Q&A on kind of around the reliability of data and sort of, and Francis, you talked about helping build a good reporting culture. And the question is there a possibility that we may be vulnerable to significantly incomplete or inaccurate data? Gary, maybe you can comment first.
Yeah, I mean, that is always an issue, isn't it? That's always going to be a problem if we don't have parts of our industry that are supplying data, and clearly that is the case with some of our associate members. So we're always striving really to improve that data set and to make sure it's as complete as it possibly can be. You know, we rely on the members reporting. So if they don't report something, that it won't get in there, and that's really the sum of it. So we can't do anything more than that, other than be very clear, and that's why for our owner operators, our full members, it's a requirement of being a member of the G+ that you report, because we want to get that as complete as we can. But of course, what it does do, and when we've got the level of data input that we have, and we regularly see the same types of report, and we regularly see the sort of same type of priorities that we need to look at, that gives us a trend. So we're probably, even the bits we're missing, we're probably representing a trend that would be there anyway. So so yes, it's very difficult to know that you're getting everything, but again, we've got to start somewhere, and I think the data set we've got now is very good and has helped us a lot over the past few years in moving the industry forward. And of course, that it just doesn't happen off the data set. It's the members who talk through that data set, and it's the members who decide what that data set is going to tell us and what direction we're going to go in.
Francis, would you like to add anything to that?
I don't have anything to add to that. Very comprehensive, Garry. Thank you very much. Yeah, very much.
I might add a comment, maybe. I think at least, so I come from the oil and gas industry, and I don't feel we were quite as open to this sort of criticism as much. But I feel that sometimes the offshore wind industry is criticized for maybe not having complete data sets, or the scoping of reporting isn't quite right. And you know, that, as Garry says, that might be true or to some extent, but it will be true for any industry really to some extent. But maybe what I would like to comment is that anything big, you know, especially with the fact that it's mandatory reporting from the full members, is going to be there. You know, lost time injuries are going to be there. The restricted work days are going to be there. Like, so anything where we are really seeing severe injury and a severe burden or impact of the work is going to be present in the data set. So we really want to build our reporting culture, and again, we can rely on the amazing work the Energy Institute has done historically on this. So the Hearts and Mind Toolkit, the Safety Culture Ladder, and all of that are things that we also encourage the G+ members to use, to participate in the more kind of in the current work in those areas. But are tools that, as members of G+, they can also access, because they are members of the EI. But this idea that our data sets are very incomplete somehow, I'd like that also to be challenged a little bit. Because yeah, I don't quite feel that is true, having seen behind the curtain of big data sets in the oil and gas industry and big data sets in the offshore wind industry. Right, I'll leave it at that. So there's another question from Ruby Roberts, who asks us about kind of capturing root causes and the implication of human factors, and what might an ideal template look like. And ideal is doing a lot of work in that question, Ruby. I don't know where to start on that. I mean, I guess I would, from me, I would think about, from my experience in the oil and gas industry, and kind of that the taxonomies that you see from the OGP causal factors, or the taxonomies from kind of ICAO in aviation, and that could maybe adopt to some extent, and kind of adjust for the realities of offshore wind. I think how we look deeper into our data and what are the bits of data we can ask for is something that Francis alluded to, that we're definitely looking to include and looking to improve in our data program. Exactly what would that look like, and what an ideal template might look like, I don't know. Maybe AI is going to be the solution here, because maybe what we have is just kind of people reporting and even doing verbal reporting, and then we can rely a lot more on maybe what AI can provide to go through kind of all of that and do in a way that I can't do by reading 1,000 incidents and trying to really understand them and categorize them. Okay, there's a few more questions also in the chat, and I'll try to get to those. There's some comments around the oil and gas industry and around the use of lagging metrics. I think we talked a little bit about leading. But so let me just kind of scroll through these a little bit. Are we leveraging the huge data sets also available from the oil and gas industry? Francis, do you want to pick that up, and then maybe I can comment?
Sorry, would you mind just repeating that again, Mariana? I was reading the Q&A box.
Oh, right.
I wasn't
Yeah.
splitting my attention appropriately there. I'm so sorry.
There's been more questions in the Q&A.
I know,
I'll split to the chat
I was
for a
distracted.
So in the chat, so from earlier on, there was a question around, are you leveraging the huge amount of data available in the oil and gas industry?
Yes, well, I think that as a quick answer, there's a level no, in that yes, we are probably more individually. I think as individual operator companies, speaking from my own experience, going out and looking what's out there from research and the other industries, etc. But I think again that's where we can improve as a collective through G+ in how we're maybe looking at what other information is available, how we can look at that against our own data, etc. So it's certainly something that would be, moving towards utilising that.
Yeah, and we're definitely learning from the oil and gas industry. For example, just at the end of last year, we ran a workshop on confined spaces in floating offshore wind, which is a risk that isn't as present now for fixed bottom structures, but will become more so in some particular designs of floating offshore wind. And so we had, IOGP come and talk to us about their experience, as well as IMCA, and what you can really tell in the confined space entry and how it kind of really challenges the traditional safety pyramid of incidents. I think, speaking from memory now, but I think from the IOGP data, if there is a confined space incident, it's sort of it's a 1-to-1. It's a 50-50 chance of it being either a fatality or an injury. So if something happens, there's just as much as chance that the outcome is fatal than not fatal. So really leveraging these huge data sets, and eventually the offshore industry will get there as well, to understand what are these things that invert the safety pyramid. So confined space entry, helicopter transport, when something goes wrong, really the potential for multiple fatalities. We don't quite have explosions in the same way, but when hydrogen co-location comes in, then that will come in. Really leveraging to learn those, and leveraging to learn what they're doing. IOGP has introduced the serious injury permanent impairment kind of metric. I don't think they've reported on it yet. They're collecting the data, but we're looking at that and going, how could we use it? Because one of the things our database isn't doing very well at the moment is truly understanding severity. Could this new metric be something that we could adopt as well and help us in this aspect of understanding what are the incidents that are really causing the most severe incidents for us? Right, a question for Garry from the Q&A. helping non-members who specialize in specific activities provide input into Safe by Design workshops, specifically launch and recovers and Metocean Boys.
So one of the things we do whenever we've got a safety by design workshop is we go out to industry subject matter experts. So we do ask for input from external companies to help us with that. I've not been involved in the boys work stream yet. I've not been involved with that, but certainly in previous safety by design workshops, yeah, we've asked the question. We've had companies come in who have specialized tools, or who may have innovative methods of rescue techniques, or whether it's a new design of harness, things like those. So yeah, we do go out and we do ask those subject matter experts to get involved. And we are talking. We have spoken recently about bringing people in who aren't members to help us with that where we really need it. So yes, we do that, yeah, I'll leave it at that. We do that. So watch out for those opportunities, and if you've got something specific that you think you can help with, by all means, get in contact with the G+ and let us know.
Absolutely. Yeah, the fabrication workstream we mentioned, we had participation in the workstream itself as workstream members from three fabricators, for example. And on Metocean Boys, we are talking to Amarest, and it is likely that they will join as a workstream member at some point as well. So yeah, get in touch, and if you feel you can contribute to something that you hear about. Another question from the Q&A from Liam. Does the G+ have aspirations to engage in experimental research as well as just data collection? Garry, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, I'll take that. So well, we do, and we do get involved with other organisations that we're doing research. We've been involved often with Catapult, who do lots of research and development work into different techniques for many different things, whether it's blades, whether it's CTVs, whether it's how you organise an operation offshore. We've been involved with those, but also more recently we've linked up with some universities, particularly the University of Portsmouth, to help us understand the physical requirements and the issues that potentially we might see downstream with our workforce doing a lot of climbing, a lot of transfer, wearing of different types of suits, different types of escape suits, those sorts of things. So when the opportunity seems right to do it, then yes, we do get involved with research, and yes, we have set up programs to do that research for us, but we don't actually do it ourselves. We use external bodies to help us. Does that sort of cover it?
Yeah, exactly. So I think the answer is we are yeah, we are doing it, and if you feel there's opportunity, you're working in something where it just has to be health and safety related. But if you are a researcher working in something that you feel is within the G+ scope, again, please do get in touch with. If we'll put it to Garry and his European focal group, or the Americas focal group, or the APAC focal group. But if the experts believe that there's benefit in it, then you might see it as a G+ workstream thereafter. Right, there's quite a bit in the chat around, yeah, it's sort of the fabrication, some comments on the fabrication work stream, but I don't think that some interesting conversation about sort of the traditional lagging indicators versus leading, about electrical not showing up so much in the work processes, and that's something that I think, and maybe Garry, you can comment, but that's something that I was very interested in, but I'll leave you.
Yeah, Garry. So although we don't have massive amounts of electrical incidents showing up in the data, we do have electrical incidents, and one of the issues we have that we've done a lot of work on recently, jointly as well with our safety on colleagues from UK onshore wind, is around the application of safety rules for achieving safety from the system. And we're also now looking at how we can roll that out and how we can make that more accessible to European countries and APAC countries and beyond that. So yes, we do have those incidents, and we do things like, I noticed that with the use of more leading OBS cards, audit reports help to understand the electrical risk is well controlled. We know we have incidents, so we know we have opportunities to learn and opportunities to do something about that. And many companies like my own run observation systems. We don't have an observation system for G+, but individual companies do, and so that's for me one of the areas that I'm particularly interested, being an ex-electrical man myself. So.
Yeah, definitely. I think like we've been talking about, anything as well where we can start to see where all of the members have these commonalities. So like we say, whether it be hazard observations as our first point, like you said, Mariana, that we venture into that and to see how we can all submit consistently in line with something like that, so then we can look at the data. I think as well with this particular point, with the electrical safety concerns, I think as well the attitude towards like, what are we doing well, is probably a really important and interesting thing for us to take forward, because is it because of the existence of the high voltage safety rules, electromechanical safety rules, different things from all the different operators, and that level of compliance, actually, is it a good thing for us to then look into that, look what's going well with everybody, and is that something then that can be carried forward. But of course a lot of that is done through many of the other work streams in other capacities as well, so not wanting to sort of double up on things, but yeah, I think it's an interesting point.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, I don't think I see any kind of new questions, so I'll just pause for a moment, see if anyone would like us to, there's any other points they'd like to make, or anything else you'd like to ask us. And if not, I will thank you all for attending. Maybe remind you one more time that you can become an individual member of the Energy Institute if your company already holds technical membership or corporate membership of the EI. Do encourage you to join and unlock your associate member benefits. And I'll leave you with the final slide with kind of all of our contacts and our LinkedIn aliases and such. Please find us on LinkedIn. It is generally the best way of staying in touch, of hearing about what work we're doing, so you can perhaps try to engage with it if, from a researcher point of view, or engage with it from an SME who is not a G+ member or associate, and find out all of our individual contacts and contact us that way. All right. Thank you so much, Francis. Thank you, Garry. Thank you, everyone, for joining and the really interesting questions. Onwards to some more leading indicators and an enhanced data program for the G+. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.